It's the start of September, and that means that it's time for the IAA, otherwise known as the International Mobility Show Germany or the Frankfurt Motor Show. It's a well-established event in the auto industry that marks the end of the summer holidays and traditionally gives us the first glance of what new cars we can expect to launch early next year. And it is usually... One second. Hello? Yeah, this is she. Yeah, I'm doing the show right now on IAA. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Oh, when did that happen then? During COVID. Right. Munich, you say? Okay. Yeah, I'll let them know. Okay. Bye. So apparently the IAA is no longer the Frankfurt Motor Show, it's moved to Munich, and so now I guess we should call it the Munich Motor Show, but since nobody knows what that is, let's stick to IAA Mobility 2021 for now, which is kind of ironic because most English language journalists tended to call the IAA the Frankfurt Motor Show. Good times. Anyway, as is usually the case, the IAA is jam-packed with a huge number of new vehicle launches and concept car debuts, and with Europe pushing really hard for a fully electric or at least fully zero tailpipe emission future, this year has more launches and reveals than I think we have ever seen before. We are not going to be able to go in depth to every single vehicle at the event because that would take several weeks, and as you might guess, we didn't have a chance to go. But we will do our best to get as many of the key vehicles covered as possible in the next few days. Today we're going to start with Mercedes-Benz and its various debuts at IAA Munich. What makes Mercedes stand impressive though? That's the 3 production debuts and 3 concept car debuts. The 3 production debuts, the EQB SUV, a car we can expect in many markets around the world next year, including North America, the EQE, a luxury all-electric sedan that's a perfect mini-me of the EQS, and the AMG EQS, a performance-badged version of Benz's flagship sedan, mark Mercedes-Benz shifting its attention away from internal combustion engine models and towards EVs. As to the concepts, while the less said about the Mercedes-Benz Vision AVTR concept the better, the second concept, a Maybach-badged ultra-luxurious EQS SUV, might look like it could make it into production. And the third concept, an all-electric G-Wagon called the EQG, makes the team a little excited to think about the potential of a true off-road G-Class champion with zero emissions. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's look at each model in turn, tell you what we know, and give you our first impressions. Let's start with the EQB. Oh, and while the EQB was officially debuted earlier this year, it was actually April when we first saw it ahead of the Shanghai Auto Show, IAA Munich is the European debut of the EQB. In China, where the EQB first debuted earlier this year, it will be offered as a 7-seat electric SUV under the EQB 250 nameplate. It will have a front-wheel drivetrain and a 140 kilowatt motor. But in Europe and North America, there will be 2 options offered. The EQB 300 4MATIC, an all-wheel drive variant with 168 kilowatt motor, and the EQB 350 4MATIC with an all-wheel drivetrain producing around 215 kilowatts. There's also rumour of an AMG variant, which of course will top the range as the most sporty and quickest EQB out there. All models will come with a 66.5 kilowatt-hour usable battery pack, capable of offering up to 419 kilometres, 260 miles on the WLTP test cycle. This translates, I'm going to guess, to around 374 kilometres on the EPA test cycle, which is around 232 miles. And yes, you did hear me right earlier. The EQB is already confirmed for a North American launch next year. Inside, the EQB features a very similar interior to the current GLB SUV, which it is based upon, with a similar load carrying and cargo capability. For the North American market, dual-zone climate control, 64-colour ambient lighting, and a power liftgate will be standard fit items, while both models will be available with either 5 or 7 seats. The rearmost row, designed for those under 5 foot 4 inches in height. Obviously, the 3-row version will have slightly less cargo carrying capability due to those retractable third-row seats. When it comes to charging, the EQB will come with an 11 kilowatt onboard AC charger and will be capable of charging at up to 100 kilowatts from a compatible CCS charging station. This means it will charge twice as slowly as the recently launched EQS, although to be fair, the EQS has a far larger battery pack. So that's a little apples to oranges. A 10 to 80% rapid charging session, according to Benz, in the EQB will be about 30 minutes in optimum conditions. As to pricing, well, we don't have pricing yet, but we're thinking mid-50s to upper 60s would be a good target for the US market, because anything higher would make it thoroughly uncompetitive. Next, let's look at the EQE. Smaller than the EQS, this all-electric sedan is likely going to become the mainstay of urban airport limo fleets, especially as it will be available with an optional rear axle steering system, just like its big brother, the EQS. Due to launch as a worldwide model, the EQE 350 is similar in external size to the CLS, meaning it's actually slightly smaller than an internal combustion engined E-Class. But, says Mercedes-Benz, it has a far larger interior dimension when compared to the regular E-Class. Like the EQS, the EQE is built on the same modular platform, which is one of the reasons it has a cavernous interior and a larger boot capacity, 430 litres or 15.1 cubic feet, when compared to an internal combustion E-Class. On paper, the EQE 350 has an NCM 811 battery with a 90 kilowatt-hour usable capacity. This gives it a WLTP range of up to 660 kilometers, 410 miles per charge. A real-world range is likely to be nearer to 590 kilometers, 366 miles per charge. With an all-wheel drivetrain, the EQE is promised to give a sporty performance in its standard form, but there is a more powerful option hinted at in the future with an AMG badged variant that could produce around 500 kilowatts of power at the wheels. Unlike the EQB, which appears to be built on previous generation tech, the EQE features similar high-power rapid charging to the EQS. It maxes out at 170 kilowatts, primarily because its battery pack is just a little smaller than the one found in the EQS. As for the interior, well, like the EQS, Mercedes is going all in with a mix of traditional Mercedes-Benz appointments mixed with a controversial full-width digital M-Bucks hyperscreen dash. Like the EQS, though, that is optional, so for those who yearn for a more traditional interior, they can get a basic center touchscreen and digital driver display. Given that many EQEs will be put into fleet service, I expect that to be the default for many customers. There's no word on pricing yet, but again, expect this to be fairly competitively priced in the mid-50s in the US, or it just won't sell. Finally, for the production debuts, there's the AMG EQS, a monster of a car that, like the rest of the AMG badged Mercs out there, puts power and performance front and center without making too many compromises for the interior comfort that Mercedes is known for. With 483 kilowatts at the wheels, the first electric car to bear the AMG badge isn't as quick as the Tesla Model S Plaid, managing the stoplight sprint in 3.8 seconds with a top speed, where legal, of 137 miles per hour, which is about 220 kilometers per hour. But if you opt for an additional AMG Dynamic Plus package, the car gains more horses, it cuts 0.4 of a second off its sprint time, and it increases its top speed to about 250 kilometers per hour or 155 miles per hour. Suspension and steering are also modified because it's an AMG, but that's about all we have. There's absolutely zero news on pricing here, but it's certainly going to be one of those cars that if you have to ask the price, you probably can't afford it. While many will scoff at this car's specs and say it doesn't compete against the Model S Plaid, I'd suggest it never did, because the interior, complete with that optional car-wide hyperscreen, is a very different feel to the Tesla Model S Plaid. In a straight line, the Tesla will win every time, but on a track, I'd be curious to see how that quad steering works out on the green hell. No, if I had to put this car head-to-head with something else, it'd more likely be the Lucid Air sedan performance. Of the 3 production debuts, it's the EQE that we think will be the most important for Mercedes-Benz, but let's now take a look at the concept cars that we saw debut in Europe at IAA. First up, the Vision AVTR. Debuted last year at CES 2020, this design was produced in collaboration with James Cameron's sequel to Avatar, hence the name, AVTR. Avatar. Clearly an over-the-top concept car. You can bet this will never see the light of day, only the light of the big screen, but what's more likely to make it into production is the concept Mercedes Maybach EQS, the car for the top tenth of 1%. Called a near-production one-off, Mercedes-Benz envisages this particular car as the ultimate in luxury, complete with a familiar Maybach two-tone paint job. The interior is opulent to the extreme, with 2 individual premium airline-style rear seats and a massive entertainment system. If you watch this, you'll know that I'm not one to usually pay attention to ultra-expensive cars, and this is no exception. But this is the first time we've seen a hint at what the promised Mercedes-Benz EQS SUV will look like. That model is expected in the next year or so, and while it's clearly a lot larger than the EQS, does seem to suggest an S-Class SUV variant will fit nicely into the EQS family lineup and allow Mercedes-Benz to go after the Tesla Model X, and if it makes it to market in the future, the Lucid Gravity, a vehicle that Lucid is expected to try to bring to market after the Lucid Air launches. But the one concept car I had most interest in from Benz is the concept EQG, an all-electric version of the iconic G-Wagen. Aside from the very twee micro website that Mercedes-Benz built devoted to the concept EQG, which includes a retro-styled take on the future as if it was still the late 70s in honour of the vehicle's origins, you need to see it to understand it. The concept EQG keeps the standard dimensions of the G-Class, but adds an all-electric off-road capable drivetrain and fully enclosed grille. The batteries are slung between the ladder frame chassis that's found on every G-Class. And like the production G-Class, there's a solid rear axle and independent suspension up front, with power delivered to all 4 wheels from the electric motors. And no, because this is a concept right now, we've not been given specs. Interestingly though, Mercedes-Benz does note in its very brief press release that the concept EQG features a 2-speed gearbox, effectively a high-low box, to allow it to truly handle off-road capabilities, and the automaker promises it will be making the EQG a production vehicle in the very near future. As a fan of more rugged vehicles, I cannot wait to see what the production version looks like. So that's it. 3 production cars and 3 concepts. Mercedes-Benz has managed to go from really not wanting to make any plug-in models at all to going all in a very short time frame, and while it still intends to produce internal combustion engine vehicles for a number of years, I think its electric offerings fit squarely into what it expects its customers demand from an electric vehicle. The EQB is maybe a bit of an outlier here, but it is at the lower end of the Mercedes-Benz family, where long range and rapid charging are less of a concern. So would I buy one? Well, no. But then I am not a luxury car fan. I think cars are tools first and foremost. But then I'm also not your stereotypical Benz customer, so I guess we're all good here. In fact, the only Mercedes I've ever owned was a Smart for 2, but I will save my reaction to Smart's Munich concept city car for another video, because, yeah. That's it! Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.